Hello, I am Sylvia Cordy, a member of Montview Presbyterian Church, and I am serving on Montview's Anti-Racism Trust team. Joining me today are our co-pastors, Ian Cummings and Clover Beal, and some of our staff from Montview. So why don't we take a couple of minutes to go around and have everyone introduce themselves and tell us what you do at Montview. Ian, I think we'll start with you.
Hi, everybody. Ian Cummins, one of the co-pastors. Been here for 18 years and loved every minute of it. It's been great. Clover.
Okay. I'm Clover Beal. I'm one of the co-pastors as well. I've been at Montview about 5.5 years, and I think this is an amazing staff. That's where I'll start. Sandy.
I'm Sandy Prouty. I'm the Minister of Children and Families at Montview. I've also been here for 18 years, nearly 19, and have enjoyed this long evolution of where Montview is now, and greatly appreciate being on the staff.
I'm Amanda Osenga, the Minister of Youth and Families here at Montview, and have the privilege of working with our teens, 6th through 12th graders, and have been here for about 2.5 years now. And I'll invite Jason to introduce yourself next.
Thanks, Amanda. Jason Hayes, Executive Director of Operations and Finance. I came 2.5 years ago, just a week or two around Amanda. I'm really grateful for the solid lay leadership at Montview. It's just a great team of lay leaders that I get to work with every day. And Adam.
Yeah, I'm Adam Waite, Minister of Music, and just like Clover, been here for 5.5 years, and this is my first pandemic, so there's that.
Okay, thank you, everyone. In June 2020, our co-pastors, Ian and Clover, wrote a letter to our congregation inviting us to look at some hard questions given the racial tension and uncertainty that we're facing in these trying times. Ian and Clover, you and the staff, I understand, have participated in a network of leaders called Next Church. Ian, why don't we start with you? Would you give us a sense of what Next Church is and how Next Church will help us answer some of the difficult questions around racism and uncertainty?
Yeah, well, Next Church is just an arm of the PCUSA, the Presbyterian Church USA. They do more than just anti-racism work. But what you're referring to, Sylvia, is a specific program that the 6 of us have been doing. Well, how long has it been, folks, now?
September.
5 months.
Since September, called the Anti-Racism Practices for Faithful Leaders. It's a cohort kind of program that we meet once a month with other faith leaders around the country, and we get a little teaching, and then we get broken into small groups. And right in the title of that is the word faithful. So it's a faith-based program. Right in the title is leadership. It's for faith leaders. It's so for us, there's a lot of secular programs out there, but not as many anti-racism programs that are faith-based. And I'll start by saying that was a real draw for Clover and me. But I have to say, this was Clover's. You should go from here, Clover, because this was her. She found it and thought that we should all do it. So,
Clover?
Yeah, so I'll pick up. And actually, I think Amanda is the one who found it, or at least alerted me to this program, because she was thinking about encouraging it, the program, to other faith leaders in the presbytery. And that's how got us talking about it. And I decided, I'd like to do this. And what attracted me to it was the expression anti-racist and practices, so for faithful leaders. So this 6 months of really looking hard at what does it mean not to just to look at racism and white privilege, which I think we have done in Montview, or tried some of the programming. But to say, what is it to be a leader, to be a visionary as a clergy, to implement actual practices. And I felt like, okay, I need to be in conversation with others doing that, other leaders in Learning Faithful. And then Ian and I talked about it, and Amanda, I think maybe you had decided to do it at that point too. And we said, well, we should have our program staff do this together, because we'll have an accountability group, a conversation group. And if we really want to impact the congregation, we should be in this work together. So hopefully what we have learned, which feels like just the beginning of some really important work, we are in it together. And it's hard to imagine that it won't bleed out, seep out into areas in the congregation.
Mm-hmm. Well, Amanda, since you were the one who founded Next Church, can you tell me what inspired you to look for Next Church, and what inspired you to do this training now?
So I think it came through actually from a Facebook post that somebody had said, hey, this would be a great opportunity to take part in. And for me, the teacher who leads the plenary sessions for us, we start with about 30 minutes of a teaching time. Her name is Jessica Vasquez Torres, and she's just, from my experience and knowledge of her, is just the person to look for and to look towards for this conversation. So that's what really inspired me, along with when I looked at it, just the setup, that it was a 5-month-long process. This wasn't just kind of a one and done type of opportunity. And then they were offering this coaching along with it. So it was, how do we really, it's not just listening to the teaching, it's having the support to also begin to integrate this. So for me, that was the biggest draw of looking specifically towards this opportunity.
Great. Okay, let's bring in other members of our staff. And maybe Sandy, we'll start with you. How will you use this training in your program area at Montview?
What I've come to think about during this time, the program sort of was an interruption of my thinking and planning, as COVID had also been an interruption. So they both came alongside each other. And I am looking at possibilities for more partnerships in the neighborhood and in the proximate Denver area for getting our children together. And the part that keeps coming to me is from the program and from our current situation as a country. So many times I heard the phrase, I saw someone who looked like me. And I think that that could be an awareness for all of our children, the children who see someone maybe for the first time who looks like them in a position of power and leadership, and for all our children to get to the point of that just being a normal part of their experience in the world. So just more collaboration, more cooperation, more planning with different partnerships in the area.
Powerful message for our young people, Sandy. Adam, why don't we go to you next? Because you're front and center every Sunday morning, and you do such a wonderful music program at Montview. So the same question, how will this training impact what you are doing in the music area at Montview?
Well, thank you for saying all those things, Sylvia. That's really, really kind of you to say all that. It's a great question, and I have to say that this program that we did was fabulous, and I'm so happy that Amanda and then Clover and Ian encouraged us all to do it as a staff, because there's so much layers to it, in the fact that we had it's plenary time with Jessica, as Amanda was saying, but then also these smaller cohorts for us to discuss. And then furthermore, us as a program staff have met to discuss as our own little cohort. And you realize how much work there is to be done. And the work that needs to be done starts with you, you as an individual. And this is kind of what Clover was saying, it then seeps out from that. So, I think the first step for what needs to be done in the music program is the work that still needs to be done with me and that I need to do with myself, and recognizing the kind of racism that's been baked into me and maybe into all of us just by being born in this country, and what has brought us to this place, the 401 years, going on 402 years that have brought us to this place. And then, simultaneous to that work being done introspective and then as a staff, as how that seeps out into the music program, right? I think, the big takeaway I keep having is we got to just keep getting real with our history. We have to, America is a unique and wonderful country, but we have to stop sweeping under the rug, again, this 400 years of history that's brought us to this place. And I think music has a unique opportunity, right? Because music already breaks down barriers. People are already a little less defensive in a music setting because there's a common language that is had there. And, for a while now at Montview, we've been running a music program. I feel that, embraces plurality. Certainly, we try to, bring to the forefront music by Black composers, and not just, during African American History Month, right? Black History Month. I think it's an important part of our fabric. I think the question that I want to have the music program, our choir, the folks that work in our music program start to wrestle with, though, is doing this music with integrity enough? Or is there more that we need to be doing to recognize the history and what has brought this, this important, hugely impactful contributions that Black musicians have made to the fabric of just American music in general? And I think doing the music with integrity is a very important step, but I think there are more steps to be had to really start to understand the history of, of what we owe just so many wonderful musicians in the culture, So it's kind of a long answer, but that's where I'm at, Sylvia.
But it was all so good. Okay, Jason. Same question to you.
Yeah, thanks, Sylvia. In my area, operations and finance, we often think about protocols, policies, procedures, and I think one of the really helpful ways that this training is impacting my area is to start to shine the light on and to kind of deconstruct in a good way, sort of take the pieces apart and take a look at how we make decisions about financial resources. How do we set priorities in our operating budget? How do we think about questions of transparency and information and decision making? And so some of the ways that this training has shaped me is that there are embedded norms and practices in organizations that are rooted in white supremacy. They're not cognitively or intentionally racist, but they're embedded in the way that we function as an organization. And so for me, the work is to really start shining the light on how do we do an audit, or how do we critically look at policies, procedures, and practices that may be embedded in white supremacy norms in a way that we're unaware of. And so that's some of the conversations I have found myself already beginning to have, and will continue as we look at those sorts of questions.
Okay, great. Now I'd like to know, has anyone learned anything about yourself that you didn't know before you embarked on this training?
Where do you want to start, Zoe? We think
Well,
we've all
Ian, since you spoke up, we'll start with you.
All right, I'll be glad to share a few things. It's the very first week, we had the invitation from Jessica to be willing to fall down and embarrass yourself, that you're not going to, this is hard work and it's awkward work. And I have found this to be true. I don't have the language, I'm not an expert in a way that I like to come into a situation to feel like I'm, if I'm in church, I know the language, I know the way the system works. And so being willing to embarrass myself and say the wrong thing or ask something that's maybe not as sensitive because I don't know how to ask it yet is better than not asking it at all. And so that's definitely one learning for me. And then I watch where I'm getting defensive. That's been a real learning for me. And then try to be curious about that. So great to have this cohort of colleagues that want to do this work together, because then we can debrief it and I can say, hey, that triggered something for me. I felt defensive about that. I heard this. And then to hear my colleagues say, well, I actually didn't hear it that way. I heard the person say this, and to realize that a lot gets lost in translation and in our communication. So going in with trust and, expecting the good intentions of others is an important part of the work. So that's one thing.
Anybody else? Amanda?
I'll piggyback a little bit off of what Ian has been saying. And, I am hopeful that I've been on this journey for a long time and have been very mindful of ways and how I've talked about racism and my own involvement in that. And yet coming into this training, there has been still so much learning. I think I wasn't expecting to see how much of my privilege and plays out into the systems and whatnot as well. So just there's a lot left to learn. I'm surprised at that.
I'm just wondering, is this only for church leaders, or what about the congregation as a whole? Are we thinking about involving or engaging other members of Montview in the next church?
Clover, why don't you take that?
Yeah, that's a great question. This cohort I think there have been about 25 of us. I guess I'm stuck on speaker view here. There were 25 of us, and some of those leaders are leaders of nonprofits or religiously affiliated nonprofits, or working in Presbyterian publishing, or so yes, they've been faith leaders, but not necessarily congregational leaders. So that I think that Next Church, which is the organization that offered this course, found that it was very helpful, useful for the participants. And I think the participants, after 6 months, we just finished our 6 months, are saying, we're just scratching the surface. Now what? And so maybe there'll be a 2.0, the next iteration for those who have gone through this. I would say then, I don't know this for sure, but I think Next Church will develop something for lay leaders, or leaders in congregations, the laity, that might not be exactly the same conversation that we've been having, because we're people who implement vision and policy, but I would think something that along the same lines of content, challenge, accountability was a very common theme in our conversations about, it's good to get all this, but how do we keep each other accountable in implementation, execution, challenge, continuing. So I think we, for sure, as a staff, will be looking for ways of having our congregation exposed connected to at least some of the same process and content. We haven't talked about that specifically, but I have no doubt that that's a priority for us.
Okay. Now let's talk about the Antiracism Trust Team, of which I'm a member. Was that idea, or was that an outgrowth of your work with Next Church, the trust team?
Right, right.
Clover?
Yeah, I'll keep going. So the Antiracism Trust Team, we were looking for, Ian and I were talking about and looking for maybe a curriculum or experience or a speaker, or something that we could begin further conversations, particularly after the killing of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor and Ahmaud Arbery, and all that was being unearthed in the nation. And for us to say, okay, we need to look again at more that's being unearthed. And so we saw, simultaneously, we had people coming to us, congregants, saying, we need to do something, we need to engage, we need to have more conversations. I'm afraid that we're gonna let go of the passion right now. And so what we simply did is invite the people in the congregation who had already showed real interest in this work and were wanting to have more conversation. And we just started there because we really weren't exactly sure. We just trusted the Holy Spirit to keep opening up the next step, the next step, the next step. So that's where we started. And then Sylvia, as you know, being on that team, we found leaders and consultants and curriculum and moving forward. So it's been kind of more amazing than we even probably imagined. And Amanda, if you want to speak to it, Amanda's as staff has been in there from the first step the whole time.
Amanda, can you tell us a little more about about Montview's Antiracism Trust Team?
Yeah, so as Clover mentioned, it was a group that kind of expressed some interest in having conversations around how Montview can be involved in anti-racism and what our next steps as a church are. And I was trying to think of the exact number. We started with 10, and I think it's grown a little bit. So we have 10 to 12 lay leaders. Diane Briscoe and Leah
Oliver.
Thank you, Oliver. Your last name. Leah Oliver are helping to co-chair that and have just been beautiful and amazing leaders and taking on the leadership of that. And then we also have been working in our initial about 5 weeks, and we meet every other week with a consultant. And her name is Siobhan Starling Lewis, and she's a pastor serving a church in North Carolina currently. And she has been a gift to the group and has brought along with her curriculum the lies between us, where we've been watching certain PBS documentaries to create a common language within our group to talk about what racism and specifically anti-racism is, and a lot of our history here in this country and how that has played out. So right now we're in the stage of just really building trust. And as I mentioned, it really has been an incredible group that has been open towards one another, and has been willing to have, I think this is a really, as Ian kind of talked about too, it's an awkward conversation. And in coming and building this trust so that we can push against one another and help kind of polish our stone. So that's the work that we're doing right now. I don't know when we started this that we totally knew where we were going to go. It's just kind of things continue to fall in place, and we are trusting the Spirit's leading to move us where we need to go. We do hope and expect that this group will help identify ways that we as an institution here at Montview, ways that we need to change and how we can integrate our learnings together. One thing that we're noticing is each person has a different place within Montview. We have elders, we have deacons, folks who are serving on committees. And so what we learn from one another from this time together, how do we take that to our different areas within the church? So I expect that there will be things that this group begins to share that will continue to spread and invite others into.
Thank you. Well, on a personal note, as a member of the team, it has been a healing process for me. I've been through a lot in my life, and I'm really happy to have or to be able to share and to feel the trust and confidence in members of the trust team so that I can share a lot of the pain that I may have experienced over the years. So thank you, Montview. So as leaders of the church, what do you imagine success would look like? We've been talking about Next Church, the Antiracism Trust Team, and we're doing other things at Montview. So what are the characteristics, or what is success in becoming an anti-racist church? Ian, I'll go back to you for that.
Well, one of the aha moments for me was realizing that this isn't just about awareness in our congregation, it's also about us as an institution. So Jason talked about this some, about looking at our hiring practices, looking at how we spend our money, what kind of, when we're doing the capital campaign, are we looking at contractors who are owned by people of color, for example? Ideas that I had not, it was a real aha moment for me to think about us, if we're going to change and what success will look like. There's really those two layers. So one, I just want to reiterate that as an institution, it's important that we look at how we do business differently, so to speak. And the other side is the congregation, and who are we as people, as Christians, as the heart of our community, and how that's going to change. In some ways, that's harder to measure or see because it's changed hearts. And while my primary goal for me is not that we look, more diverse, it's that we change our hearts. But I have to say, I do think over time, if our hearts are truly changed as a congregation, we will see more diversity on the staff, in the congregation. It'll show. And so in terms of something measurable, I do hope down the road to see some of that as well. It's not the main point. I think we can be a largely white church that grows, without becoming more ethnically diverse. But I do have a hope for that, that it's an outgrowth of the changed hearts. So start there.
With that, I think that's a perfect way to close this session. Gee, we've got a lot to think about. You've given us so much food for thought today, and I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you, Sylvia. Thank you. Thank you so much.